Okay, we are streaming to YouTube. Ready when you are, Mayor McClure.
Okay. We'll call this meeting of the Seward City Council to order. It is Monday, August 10th, 2026. And we have a full roster now at 7 p.m. Chief Tyner, would you please lead us in the pledge? Good job.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Roll call for tonight's meeting. Barnwell? Here. Kreitz?
Here.
Warner?
Here.
Osenga? Here. Calhoun? Here. Draper?
Here.
And Mayor McClure?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great. We have no proclamations or awards tonight. Now we have citizen comments on any subject except items scheduled for public hearing. We do have one public hearing item. It is the one involving the heat pump rate. So you can speak to that at the time of the public hearing. Anything else, you can talk for 3 minutes. There's a sign up. The people signed up gets first shot, and then I'll take shows of hands. And there's a 36-minute total time for this. And when you come up to speak, there's a chair there and a mic, and we need your name and whether you live inside or outside the city limits. Mr. Clerk, who's signed up?
There's one person signed in to speak, Bob Kandopoulos.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, members of Seward City Council, my name is Bob Kandopoulos. I live in Seward for 46 years, and I live outside of Seward city limits now. I came here in 1980 right out of high school, and when I got here, one of the first things I saw when I came into Seward was a sign that said, "Welcome to Seward, Alaska, voted All-American City." And that sign is now gone. And since then, our community spirit has been waning. The reason I'm here tonight is because I received an email from the Community Development Department asking me to remove signs from my private properties to conform with the new one-sign code. We now have a code that restricts the number and size of campaign signs on our own property. Clear violations of our First Amendment rights. We've also had campaign floats excluded from our 4th of July parade. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The Supreme Court has spoken directly to this issue. In City of Ladue versus Gileo, decided in 1994, the court held that residential political signs are a unique and important form of free speech. Displaying a sign on your own property identifies the speaker with the message in a way no other form of communication can. The court said cities cannot simply ban or severely restrict this kind of expression just to reduce visual clutter. Later, in Reed versus Town of Gilbert in 2015, the court made clear that content-based sign rules, especially those that treat political signs differently, are subject to the highest level of constitutional scrutiny and almost always fail. Strict numerical limits on political signs on private property have repeatedly been struck down by the courts. Seward was once known as an all-American city. We welcome people with pride. Let's bring that spirit back. I want our town to be a place where everyone feels they belong, where political differences don't silence our voice or keep you out of the parade. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So no one else has signed up, right? Okay, who else would like to speak? If you just raise your hand. Come on up. Yeah.
Yes, my name is Jerry Fogg. I live at 2504 Maple, Seward. And I believe that political signs are free speech, just as you guys believe that painting our streets are free speech. You guys are breaking the law and do nothing about it. So what's good for you is not good for the little, I guess. So I'm very much opposed to you guys saying we cannot post signs, but they have to be to your scrutiny. We are very much opposed to your ways, but that doesn't make a difference. You are opposed to ours, and you send us letters saying you're wrong. Well, I think each one of you that says painted street, that I have to explain to my grandkids why queers are better than the main people. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, you just got up? Linda, did you have it? Yeah. Sorry, there's a chair back in the way there.
Linda Paquette, outside city limits. This is just off the cuff. I didn't plan this one because I spent all day planning the other speech I'm going to make. But I just think it's time that the community think about the children that may be marginalized from receiving the kind of support from elders that they may have received historically in the past from places that they went. A lot of families have moved away from attending church. And that's fine, and that's their personal preference. But what we've seen over the last 20 to 25 years as that's been happening is that there's a real loss that the children have experienced in terms of the kinds of things that they might have received had they been going to that kind of structured community. And so what I'm just throwing out here, and it's just like, this is just the beginning of my thinking about this, but children as they're growing up need to receive the adulations of their elders. And they don't necessarily have that if they have broken homes, which many of them do. And if they're not going to anything else like church or synagogue, there is no other structure for kids to receive that kind of adulation. Sure, there might be a talent show. They don't happen even yearly, I don't think. And so I'm just beginning to ponder what could a community do to create activities that the kids could do, that then there could be adults and elders there to watch them. You know, when a little, and when you use a church example, historically it was only for the little boys in most churches, Catholic churches and synagogues. It was typically little boys that got the most experience of that. But I think that we could create events and situations where kids could, you know, get up and maybe recite the Bill of Rights, say. It's the kind of thing that a little kid can be proud of their accomplishment and receive the accolades of the elders around them. It's something that happens in tribal situations, and I think that the kids growing up now, we see it in this manosphere thing that's happening with the little boys. It's happening to the girls too, and I think we just should be starting to think about that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Linda. Anyone else? Okay, come on up.
My name's Kenneth Moore, and I live outside the city. And I agree with Bob and the other gentleman in that we spend way too much time trying to restrict each other's speech and we should spend a lot more time worried about building infrastructure and doing things that are going to help the community rather than harm the community. Anytime you're holding back somebody's speech, especially on their own private property, you are definitely in the wrong. That's about all I had to say.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, we'll move on to, are you sure? Oh, sorry. I didn't realize there were people out there. I just saw them.
John Weisel, outside the city limits. Yep, I'm here to voice that I think you guys have a lot better things to do with your time. And like we just had Dan Sullivan do this huge thing that's going to take a lot of years of effort to help the city of Seward. And I don't think we need to be going over and making more rules and regulations. I would like you guys to think about when was the last time we pulled back some rules and regulations, cleaned up some processes, maybe make the CUP process easier. We really have this great opportunity, and we should be making it easier. And sometimes all the rules that were made clearly were not good rules, kind of like this sign rule. So maybe it's a little bit too much, and maybe it's time to reflect and spend some time pulling back some rules across the board and help the town out and promote some growth, because we have a real opportunity. But I hope we don't sit here and spend more time on sign rules. And yeah, I think things can just use a little bit more common sense and get a lot easier and go from there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Victoria, is there anyone else out there wanting to?
Anyone else wants to make a comment? Anyone else? Do you want to make a comment?
No? Anyone else in here? Okay, now we'll move on, sorry, to the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda. I'd like a motion and a second, please.
I'll move for the approval of tonight's agenda and consent agenda. I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any changes anyone would like to make? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Clerk?
Voting on the approval of tonight's agenda and consent agenda, Kreitz,
Yes.
Draper,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Warner,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
and Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Your agenda and consent agenda have been approved, and on the consent agenda were the July 27th, 2026 City Council meeting minutes and no grounds for protest for the AMCO liquor license renewal for the Alaska Seafood Grill.
Okay. That brings us to the city manager report, which you'll find on page 14 if you're reading along. Madam City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just highlight a wonderful thing that did happen today. As some commenters stated, we had Senator Sullivan and the Commandant, Admiral Lundy of the U.S. Coast Guard, in town today to tour the town since we've been chosen as a future home port of an icebreaker. So it was a really great opportunity to show the Admiral all of the opportunities that we have in Seward. He went across the bay with the harbor master and met with the team over at JAG, and we had a great lunch thanks to the American Legion. So a big kudos and a thank you to the Legion and everybody that showed up for the afternoon event at the Branson Pavilion. I will admit I got a little sunburnt and had to go take like a 15-minute nap afterwards. So I appreciate everybody for braving the heat and celebrating Seward's being chosen as the home port of the icebreaker. Also on that same note, on July 20th, the Coast Guard awarded their contract to Orion Construction for the construction of the housing and cutter support building up in the forest in the Hilltop property area. So we're excited to see that move forward. And then we will have other visitors throughout the week thanks to the Coast Guard Foundation dinner up in Anchorage tomorrow night. So we'll see a lot of coasties come through over the next few days. So big kudos to everybody for being super welcoming and coming to the celebration.
Anything else?
That's all from me.
Wow, okay. Questions, comments? Councilmember Calhoun.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one question that I had.
as we go through and we see all of the statistics and things from the fire department, the police department, is it possible for us to get the same kind of statistics from the ambulance corps in the report? I know it's not a city department per se, but
I could reach out to them and see if they would be willing to provide that. Yeah.
That would be interesting. Anything else? I will say that the attendance at the Branson Pavilion at the celebration with everyone was, there were a lot of people there, and it was a nice cross-section. It was really good to see, so a lot of support.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Karen would like to come up and talk about the library. I apologize.
Busy day.
Busy day.
Also, I promise I'll get this over quickly so my water doesn't break in front of me. I just have a couple highlights from the library. I'm Karen Christine, or sorry, I don't need my middle name. I'm Karen Cooper McLaughlin. I'm the Deputy Director at the Library and Museum. And I just wanted to highlight a couple things. The summer reading program ends on Wednesday by 6 p.m., so log those last remaining minutes. We did beat all of our goals. We had 302 people registered, and the community read 330,123 minutes, which is about 7.5 months of continuous reading collectively. So that is huge. We beat last year's by 2.5 months and added an additional about 120 people. So very cool. I'm very proud of everyone. Keep reading. Don't stop reading because the summer's over. Read year round, please. And then we have been working on our libraries transforming communities accessibility grant. We received $10,000. You guys approved it. And so last Monday and today I had community conversations with people in our community who had disabilities or worked with people, and we got a lot of really good feedback on what they want us to spend the money on. So we'll be submitting that report. A lot of them were really simple ones. We have just the one handicap parking spot, and it's on a downward hill. So if you're getting out of your car, you're rolling away from the library into the street. So that's a simple fix. So there's another spot we're going to work with Public Works and I think you guys to get that approved and make sure that is all good to go. We do also have our hydroponics set up. We received a grant through the Seward Community Foundation. So we have a garden system and an InstaFarm hydroponic system. It's all set up, so please stop by, come check it out, watch the greens grow. We will be doing some programming this fall on educating on how hydroponics works. And then all the greens grown will be donated to the Senior Center, and the He Will Provide Food Bank. Again, this project was made possible with support from the Seward Community Foundation. And then just two more things. The stuffed animal sleepover is happening, so you can start dropping off if your kid wants to have a library adventure for their stuffed animal, they can bring it to the library between August 21st and August 22nd, August 12th and the 15th. The sleepover will happen, and then you can pick them up on August 21st and 22nd, and you'll get a little book of what your stuffed animal was up to while I was in the library overnight. And then the very last thing is that while I'm on maternity leave, we do have the Kenai Fjords National Park Rangers coming in, and they're going to be doing Read with the Ranger program every Friday at 12:30. So make sure your kids come and check that out. It'll be really fun. And I think that's it. My water didn't break, so we're good. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, now are there any questions or comments for City Manager?
No, thank you.
Okay, we're done. Okay, City Clerk report. You got some pictures on page 27 and beyond. You want to say something?
Thank you, Mayor McClure. The month of August tends to be a pretty busy one for the clerk's office. The filing period to be on City Council is open from August 1st to August 17th at noon. We have not received any applications yet. So let's put a word out there to apply if anyone's interested. Now we're also helping the state of Alaska run their early voting, absentee in-person voting for the primary election. So that's right here in council chambers, 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. And lastly, the Obihiro Student Exchange is in full swing. I included a few photos in the packet just from early on in their visit, and currently Jody is with our Seward group now. They just had a fun time in Tokyo and are now in Obihira with the group at a welcome party. So everything is going really well over there.
Nice. Questions for the clerk? Yes, Councilmember.
What does this mean?
Peace.
Oh, that was, what- yeah.
It seems like year after year all the students do that for photos, so I just started doing it too.
Yeah, they were doing
That's a
it.
great photo of the bowl there. Is that up on the bowl?
Yeah,
Yeah.
took them on a forced march.
And Chris made it.
That's his third year in a row to the race
Oh, so he
point.
did a 3.
Yeah, he did a 3.
I got to take them, had lunch with them and took them on a tour of the murals, all 30-some of them, which sounds really boring, but they enjoyed it, and we drove. But the most exciting thing was meeting the city clerk's twin boys, I think. They just thought that was great. Anyway, it was a good time. Anything else for the clerk? Okay. We have a city attorney report on page 29, and we happen to have a couple of them here, attorneys, actually, right there.
We do. We're plenty of personnel on this table tonight. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have Cody George with me. I assume most of you have met him. He's been doing a lot of utility stuff, and over the last 4 or 5 years or whatever it's been now, has been handling a number of things for Seward, but just comes down less than I do. He was down for a financial presentation regarding the utility, and I came down and spent most of the day just over at the utility kind of working, and it was really kind of nice. I tried to check in with Kat. She was very busy, as we know, but kind of got just the ebb and flow of the utility department, which I didn't expect, but great day in Seward. We're glad to be here. The report is there, consistent with my approach every time. I try to make it pretty quick and maybe pick 1 or 2 things, but July was kind of interesting. I feel like we started off very busy with a lot of different Seward things, and then toward the end of the month, we our times out of the office with summer things didn't mismatched with administration's time off, so a few things toward the end of the month got just kind of slowed down, and we'll speed back up again, I think, with summer vacations being just kind of wrapping up now a little bit. But so if you see something on there that seemed like it should have maybe reached resolution by now, we know we just kind of got a little mismatched. The one thing I thought was just kind of interesting on here, and most of this is just kind of the ebb and flow. There has been a little, it seems to me, like a little more uptick in public records stuff. I particularly enjoy the public records issues, so that's been fine from my angle, but that's something I just feel like anecdotally I have noticed. Another one that's interesting is just working on a lease for the middle school from the borough, and it's just a couple of comments about that. I mean, Jason's not here tonight. He's been largely taking the lead on that, but it's just sort of interesting, the stuff that we do in the day-to-day. Get a call saying we want to lease a middle school. It's just not something, the creativity and the variation and different things that people do to make things work is kind of really interesting to me. The other thing that I noticed about that is how well, like on that one in particular, KPB had attorneys as well who were aware of it and kind of looking at some different drafts, but really administration does a really good job in Seward of just being able to kind of run with something like that and just sort of check in and do the legwork, and it's really kind of interesting. So I just thought that was noteworthy as I was flipping through this. Sometimes something appears as an item in a sentence with 3 other things, but it represents hours of work on behalf of the city and our office, and so but otherwise things are going well, no major issues to report, and I think now that summer's going to start winding down, we'll get back to our regular ebb and flow with administration. Any questions on that for me or anything that Cody's working on, which is largely utility matters?
Councilmember Barnwell.
Yeah, Sam, you didn't mention the pool. I probably should have brought this up to Kat earlier, but I don't know if you're involved in that negotiation. I know that the borough had kicked in some money for some of the other communities, and was curious how we're working out those details.
I can answer that one. So Sam and I did work together on the contract for the pool funding that was brought forward a few months back now, it seems. And one of the key points of that was that we would pay, so we would pay a set amount, but it would be prorated if things were paid back. And we also had a cancellation clause in there that was about 3 months. So that was sort of the protective spots to say, we did this first, we brought forward this contract first, but we want to make sure that if anybody else does a different contract with more resources given to them, ours is reevaluated. So I've been in discussions with the school district to make sure that the communities of Kenai, Soldotna, Homer, and Soldovia, they're using ours as a model, but at the end of the day, we all put in the same percentage. So it's not completely finalized yet. Ours, while we have approved it as a body, has not been approved by the district or the borough because they're still working out the rest of those details. So we might have something kicked back here to adjust and to move forward with, just to make sure it's equitable across the board. But I will say, working with Sam on that contract, we were able to kind of set and lay a framework for the other communities.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks for asking. We were going to ask that. Any other questions or comments for your attorney? Either of them. Well, thank you for being here then. Okay, we'll move on to the actual business part of the evening. We have an ordinance for enactment first, and I have to ask the clerk because it is, this is a public hearing item. Yeah, it wasn't really clear on here. So, public hearing on ordinance 2026-007. Mr. Clerk, would you please read that into the record?
Ordinance 2026-007, amending Seward City Code 15.10.140 definitions and 15.10.226 land uses allowed for marijuana establishments.
Okay, and you'll find that on page 31 of the packet. I'd ask for motion to enact in a second, please.
I move for the enactment of ordinance 2026-007.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Administration, do you have?
Oh, there. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll invite the Community Development Director to speak to this.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. So this ordinance comes forward with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission following its Title 15 review of the city's marijuana establishment regulations, taking into account the recent ordinance that City Council made to Title 8. So this ordinance updates the definitions for marijuana establishments and updates the land uses allowed table to further define where different marijuana-related uses may occur. Specifically, it prohibits cultivation and heavy manufacturing facilities. It removes retail and testing facilities from certain zoning districts, and it requires a conditional use permit for light manufacturing and testing in the industrial zoning district. The ordinance also expands the city's existing 500-foot buffer to include additional uses, including park-zoned property, and it requires marijuana establishments to operate from a permanent structure. I do want to briefly explain the March 1st date included in the ordinance. By adding that park-zoned property to the buffer, that 500-foot buffer, that would make the existing 4th Avenue marijuana establishment a non-conforming use due to its close proximity to Kawabi Park, which was not the Commission's intent, and so the Commission wanted new restrictions to apply going forward while allowing existing lawfully established marijuana establishments to remain conforming, which is why that date was included. Following that recommendation, the city attorney's office reviewed the ordinance and recommended an amendment to how that protection is written. And so that amendment that you all have as laid down does not change the intent of the ordinance or the commission's recommendation. It accomplishes that same objective, but language that the city attorney believes has better legal standing. And so administration is recommending council adopts that amendment, which is presented as laid down.
Okay. And did you have anything to add?
No, I do not. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so what we'll do is have the public hearing and then bring it back to council. So I will open the public hearing on ordinance 2026-007. Mr. Clerk, has anyone signed in?
There are 2 people signed in. First on the list is Linda Paquette.
Okay, and with the public hearing, the name and where you live in or out is still there, and you'll have 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. Linda Paquette, outside city limits. I'm asking you to reject Ordinance 2026-007. First, I will ask the city to begin using the term cannabis in all its ordinances and official documents. Cannabis is the appropriate terminology for a legal, regulated industry in Alaska. But terminology is not the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is you've been given conclusions, but nowhere in the packet do I see where are the findings. Administration tells you this ordinance will reduce potential land use conflicts and ensure cannabis businesses remain compatible with surrounding properties. What documented land use conflicts? Where are the complaints, nuisance findings, safety findings, traffic data, or other evidence demonstrating that there is a significant problem enough to justify the restrictions? If that evidence exists, it should be in front of you before you vote. 2 comprehensive plan provisions are cited to support this ordinance. Neither say anything about cannabis or supports these particular restrictions. Where is the evidence that these restrictions represent the values of the Seward community and not just the personal values of a particular member or members of P&Z? There's history here specifically involving the Tufted Puffin Port Avenue location that cannot be ignored. In December and in March, including another ordinance, 004, and now just months later, yet another ordinance that imposes still more restrictions and prohibits entire categories of cannabis businesses. We need to acknowledge an important fact. There's only one cannabis business operator in the city of Seward, the Tufted Puffin with 2 locations. So although this ordinance is written in general terms, its practical context and application cannot be ignored. This council should ask, if the Tufted Puffin didn't exist, would these restrictions be before you today? If the answer is no, then you really need to look very carefully about what's actually happening here. Land use decisions should be based on objective standards, documented problems, and legitimate public purposes, not whether an individual government official approves of a particular business, and certainly not upon individual religious beliefs. Every P&Z member is entitled to their religious belief, but religious conviction is not a land use criterion. Whether someone personally believes Jesus would approve or disapprove of cannabis is a matter of personal faith. It's not a basis for municipal law. The comprehensive plan says the city should reflect community values. It does not say personal values of individual commissioners. There's an enormous difference. Cannabis is legal and regulated in Alaska. Adults in this community, including many senior citizens, use cannabis for medical purposes, and they should be considered. If Seward has a problem with youth obtaining cannabis illegally, then address the illegal supply. If there's an odor problem, address the odor. If there's a traffic problem, address the traffic. If there's a nuisance problem, address the nuisance. But don't prohibit legal businesses without first demonstrating the problem you're supposedly solving. There's a larger principle here at stake as well. Business and property owners make investments based on rules established by their community. If those rules can be rewritten because particular office officials don't like a particular lawful business, every business is at risk. Today it's cannabis. Tomorrow who? Before you vote, I ask that you ask the city attorney publicly and on record, Given the history leading to this ordinance, the one business being impacted, and the stated justification of the comprehensive plan, does Ordinance 2026-007 expose the city to legal challenges based on unequal, arbitrary, or discriminatory treatment? And listen very carefully to their answer. This vote is not about whether you personally believe in cannabis or like it. It's about whether the city of Seward governs lawful businesses fairly, consistently, and based on evidence. If the city cannot demonstrate the problem this ordinance is necessary to solve, it shouldn't be creating a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. I urge you to reject Ordinance 2026-007, or in the words of Nancy Reagan, just say no.
Okay, thank you. Who else?
Next on the list, Susie Towsley.
My name is Susie Towsley. I live outside city limits. First of all, I want to make very clear that I speak here tonight as a private individual and in my private personal capacity. I, too, encourage you to vote no on this ordinance. I'm not near as eloquent or have near as long a speech printed up to follow up Linda. I support all the points that she made. It feels to me as though this is not evidence-based. It's coming from a perceived values point of view, and it devalues an existing business that benefits the community. So I encourage you to make your decisions based on evidence and not on antiquated, fear-based theology. Thank you again, council members, for your time and energy up here. I know it's not always easy, and that's all I have to say on that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clerk?
No one else was signed in.
Oh, okay, so another show of hands type thing. If anyone else want to testify, just raise your hand or let me know somehow. No one else? Yeah, come on up.
Randy Wells, inside Seward city limits since 2007. This is rather emotional, as you can imagine, to have been targeted for 3 years for no evidence of any wrongdoing whatsoever, yet we spent 3 years targeting an entire legal industry. Whereas when I was on council with Councilmember Calhoun, Mayor McClure, and Osenga, we actually expanded opportunities for the cannabis industry. And now, here we are, voting to restrict it so much so that if the Tufted Puffin was ever to go away, there would never be another cannabis business in this community. That's called spot zoning. And planning and zoning has spent the last 3 years spot zoning. And now here we are. They say it's for the benefit of the community, and what about the children? There was over 4,900 alcohol-related DUIs in the state of Alaska last year. There's only 2 restaurants in our entire community that doesn't serve beer, wine, or liquor. Even council members have voted to expand access to alcohol in our community. The state has a serious alcohol problem. Hundreds, almost 700 deaths last year due to alcohol. And it's considered every single year to be one of the highest addicted alcohol communities and states. We make jokes about it. Small town with a drinking problem. It's not funny. But yet everybody keeps saying that getting rid of the cannabis industry is for the safety of the community. Then why are you not making these spot zoning regulations for the alcohol industry? You can't get the chief to talk about how many DUIs have come from the Tufted Puffin. None of you have asked publicly, but I have. And I guarantee that it's a zero, especially in comparison to the uptick that we had in 2025, when we had almost 400 alcohol-related DUIs in our community, and none were cannabis-related. The Tufted Puffin has had an on-site Cannabis Cafe for 3 years. 3 years. No violations. Even though we've been reported countless times, so many times that code inspectors now find it hilarious. If you make any changes to tonight's resolution, or ordinance, it should be to include every single alcohol establishment in our community. Because if your reasoning is about protecting the community, where's your voice about alcohol? Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Jennifer Wells, Inside City Limits. I just wanted to say that the Tuffy Puffin has been open for 8 years. During the first 5 years of our establishment, the number one question we were asked is, where can I consume this legally? And so we took the responsibility of solving that issue within our community and providing an on-site consumption area where people can safely and legally consume without breaking their lease agreement or smoking in their rental car or smoking in their Airbnbs and things like that. We took the responsibility of solving that issue, and we are paying dearly for it with these types of ordinances. So please consider that when you make your decision tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room? Is there anyone in the hall that would like to? Wish we had a window. No? Okay, last chance. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Council, what you got? Did you, Councilmember Calhoun?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to move to amend this ordinance by striking, and we're going to 1510-26H2 by striking in an application submitted after March 1st, 2026. From the first line, going to strike that and then add a final sentence that says, the buffer prohibitions codified by Ordinance 2026-007 is what we're looking at, do not apply to the marijuana establishments lawfully operating on or before March 1st, 2026.
Okay, that motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion? Councilmember Barnwell, or go ahead.
Can I ask Councilmember Calhoun the intent of that change?
Probably best answered by the city administration.
Or even the city attorney.
Or the city attorney.
I could take a stab at it. There's another, I don't have the code up right in front of me, but the language, the new style, the proposed amendment is consistent with another section of the code that was written the same way. So that's where this language concept for the amendment comes from, is from another section. And it's just a more effective, what it's trying to do is give effect to the fact that there are existing entities which would be impacted. I mean, that's what it's trying to do, is carve those out. But the way it's written right now, it says a marijuana establishment in an application submitted after March 1st. Well, this would be effective like September 1st, so it just kind of leaves this weird void between, like, it's just kind of inartfully written is about the extent of it. It just kind of leaves a weird, like, well, what about the 6 months in between there? Like, it's just kind of, it's largely grammatical to bring it in line with the impact of the, or to make it like the existing code for that other section and create a, it's sort of, essentially doesn't really mean anything as written. It's not, the intent is to recognize the existing uses and not impact them, but the way it's written, it just doesn't really do that. It just kind of creates a weird sort of 6-month. It applies to things that happened, yeah. So that's really what it is, if that makes sense.
Okay. Councilmember Farmer.
Sam, if you, Mr. Wells pointed out that we may be in some sort of legal jeopardy by spot zoning or targeting that industry. And it's a good question, and I'm wondering if you can comment.
Yeah, I can. I don't believe that it's spot zoning. When we reviewed this, it is a lot of focus on a particular industry, but by Alaska statutes for marijuana, the city does have a lot of power to regulate. It also, the city has a lot of power regarding land use and zoning. So I don't know that it is, I do not see a legal issue so much as a legislative discretion question. I think this body has the ability within reason, and I believe this is within reasonable bounds, to set policy about marijuana sales in the city. So I think both the pro and con cite a lot of law, and I believe the ordinance that's in front of you is within the bounds of what you can do, and it's ultimately largely a exercise of legislative discretion. But the authority to regulate zoning within the city is within, again, some limits, is within this body's power, and to regulate marijuana is within this body's power. So it's largely a, do we want to do it?
Okay, so I'm just going to,
Yeah,
thank you, Sam. I just maybe open this up as a question to the council, the rest of the council members. I do think Mr. Wells brings up a valid point about comparing alcohol, which we know is very harmful to our culture, and yet it's been accepted and normalized for centuries. You know, in this town, a century, or a little over a century, I guess. I guess my feeling in response to that, Randy, is the fear. I think you're right. I really do, and I think we are. We should ultimately have a discussion about regulating alcohol too, to be honest. But in terms of the marijuana industry, because there are shops just 2 miles away, or across the river, that are unregulated, I don't think we're unnecessarily punishing the industry as much as we might consider. And the fact is, there are still a lot of unknowns in the industry that I question. But I question that same thing about alcohol. So that's my 2 cents. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that. But.
Point of order, Madam Mayor, not to interrupt, but you are discussing the amendment, not the overall ordinance in this moment. No. Sorry about
Get down rabbit holes a lot. The amendment being on the floor. So the date was put in the way back time when we first discussed this, having that particular March 1st date. So, and it was intended to, I believe, protect the existing establishments.
That's correct, yeah. And it had to do with the timing at the time. It seemed particularly important because of the time that the CUP in that was upheld, and then the ordinance was, there was an ordinance in March or April, yeah. And so it was just to make sure that kind of 2 things in play, and so we wanted to be clear to carve it out at the time.
So as to the amendment, are there any other comments, questions?
I believe this is in regard to the amendment. So if this amendment were passed, or if Randy's statement that if his business outright closed, that another business would not be able to open, versus him being grandfathered in to continue and either sell his business or pass it along to an heir. Is that correct, that if he outright closed, then a new business wouldn't have this March 1st grandfather date and would be subject to all of these things?
Due to the additional zones and locations added into this code under H2, in the current location as it stands, if the business closed, there would not be able to be another one open. This new code prohibits that in that current location, and yeah, because there's Kawabi Park is right there, so that would prohibit a lot within that area.
Okay. Are we ready to vote on the amendment? Okay. Mr. Clerk, would you read it, please, for the record, and then we'll vote.
So the amendment as presented in the laydown was striking in an application submitted after March 1st, 2026 from the first line and adding a final sentence that says, buffer prohibitions codified by Ordinance 2026-007 do not apply to the marijuana establishments lawfully operating on or before March 1st, 2026.
Okay. We're ready to.
Okay, voting on the amendment. Calhoun?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
Kreitz?
Yes.
Warner?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
Draper?
Yes.
And Mayor McClure.
Yes.
That motion is passed, and the main motion as amended is back on the floor.
Okay, now we'll discuss aspects of the main motion. This particular ordinance was brought to us by Planning and Zoning, and if you've watched their meetings, the changes made were discussed rather extensively and for a long time, so, I don't know. Yes, Vice Mayor Osenga.
I'm trying to figure out the best way to ask this or state this. So, if I'm hearing Councilmember Draper's comments, and it almost sounds to me like if we pass this and they decide to sell their business downtown, what happens to the value of that building and that business because it can't be replaced, is what I'm getting at. I'm not saying what happens, I'm just saying, it seems to me like it would be devaluing his business down there, and I'm not sure
Danny's inching his way.
how that would work.
It's a great question. I think it's asked a lot. So we, as an office, and then working with the Planning and Zoning Commission, work with Title 15, which is land use regulations. And it's important to note that when it comes to land use, the use is run with the land. And so we don't really look at ownership as anything. So if like a conditional use permit can get passed from one person to another with a sale of the property or the use, and the same would occur in Title 15 with this language. And so the business owner could sell the business, and it would still be considered a conforming use. It's if he shut down and another business wanted to come into that spot, it would have to be, it could not be a marijuana establishment.
Could you say that again?
So,
I think we're all.
Title 15 does not really look at ownership. And so the owner of the Tufted Puffin, so for example, we'll just use that example. The 4th Avenue location of the Tufted Puffin is within that 500-foot buffer of anything zone park. So if you adopt this ordinance with those new buffers, that could have made that a non-conforming use. By putting the date in, the March 1st date, it creates that as a conforming use. And so that means the business owner can sell the property, and that business would still be able to be run as a marijuana establishment with the new owner. If the business closed down and then someone else came in, there was no sale, but the new business owners would have to abide by the new regulations, which would be that 500-foot buffer.
Sam, is that right?
I think we needed to hear it twice, yeah, thank you.
Right, no, it sounds right, and I think that's similar to the exchange between Ms. Sorensen and Ms. Draper, where it's,
Right.
if it shut down, then yes, it would be impossible to start up again, but if it were transferred in a way that was allowed to run with the land.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Madam Mayor? If it shut down, or say the Tufted Puffin as an entity no longer existed, but the building was sold to a new cannabis business, would that cannabis business be able to utilize that space? Or it would have to be they would have to take the name or the LLC of Tufted Puffin?
Do not think that we would likely inquire about the business transaction and
yeah.
not level the detail because it's the land use.
It's the land use, not the, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Councilmember Draper, and then Kreis.
This might be silly, but does it work the other way around, that other, like a daycare center can't open within 500 feet of them?
Oh.
Versus, you know what I mean? Like, what if somebody can't, or we're gonna designate a new park within 500 feet, you know what I mean? Does it only work the way that they have to open within?
That
It's an interesting, I hadn't thought of that, but I guess, I mean, this prohibits what individuals can do. And if the government wants, is that what you're?
I was gonna the way the ordinance is written, if you look at page 36, H2, a marijuana establishment, with that amendment, a marijuana establishment cannot be located within 500 feet of the entrance of, and then it goes on. So it's regulating marijuana establishments, not if another establishment chose to go in within those 500 feet afterwards, it's not necessarily prohibitive of that.
Okay. Councilmember Kreis, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that I'm really not in favor of this, just the way that it reads, because I feel like you are restricting just the industry in general. If he sells not even if he sells the business, if he goes out of business, then you've essentially restricted that industry from coming back into this town. So we have made that decision that we're not going to have that type of industry in this town if he goes out of business. I mean, that's what we're doing.
Right, I sense that was the intent, actually, from watching. Councilmember Barnwell, you said?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I mean, despite what individuals here up on the dais or within the community, it's a community. There are people that utilize that business, and it's very important for them. And we have to honor all of these people. It seems a bit onerous to me at this point, but I don't know.
Do you think there would be anything to be gained by sending it back to planning and zoning and having heard what has been presented now? We could essentially do something like that.
I would say if you were to do that, give direction, because this is what they brought to you, so.
That's what I know there has been a desire on the part of a lot of people and planning and zoning to have us do something, and for quite some time. We haven't heard that lately, which is interesting, but that doesn't mean that this hasn't been bandying about for a long time. So I'm not suggesting we send it back to them, I'm just saying it's a possibility to, maybe if they modified it, it would be. Yes, Vice Mayor.
So if we were to not approve this, then would there is there a time for them to limit, or they can come back with something
That's,
else in the future?
So what I would say is you have two choices in front of you. The first is you can, or a few choices, I'll walk them. You can pass it as amendment tonight with the adjustment made. You could also, if you so choose, further amend to remove the additional locations, which would then revert it back to the previous level of enforcement that we currently had, removing those additional restrictions and passing as is with the added language that planning and zoning worked on. Or you could motion to send it back down to them entirely, but I would request that there's firm directions. If there's something that you don't feel or that you would want to see changed, send that to planning and zoning, because as Madam Mayor did say, they spent a lot of time discussing this. So sending them back and saying, do it again, it might just come back to you as is.
okay. Councilmember Barnard.
If we struck the prohibit marijuana retail stores from operating within the office residential zoning district, how much, I guess it's, I mean, how much does that limit, or would that open up more opportunity for one? I think that originally we were talking about limiting it to 2 or 3 businesses. At this point, we're really just one.
So we,
I don't know.
Councilmember Calhoun.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think just on this one little subject, as far as, I don't know that we're limiting it to 1. We've limited it to 2 inside the city limits. I don't think we're changing that. I think what's being changed is where those businesses can be located. We're not, and I understand, you know, this is a hot topic. There have been multiple work sessions and meetings, and the availability for public comment on all of this over the last few months that we've been discussing this. And what this does, I get that it puts some additional limits on where a business can be located, but yeah, if that business closed down, wasn't sold to anybody, just shut down, closed it up, moved out, it's gone, nobody could open up a marijuana shop in that location. It doesn't mean that another marijuana shop can't be opened in the city limits. It just means that location. So we're not really limiting any more than we already have the number of businesses that would be available. We're just limiting the place that a new business could operate if one of the 2 existing businesses just shut down, it wasn't sold and wasn't, passed on, however the state allows that to happen. So it's, if we're going to, limit more, then that's gonna be more a Title 8 thing than a 15 thing. What we're doing is just simply saying, these businesses are fine to operate where they are right now. If they just shut down and there's not a new business that purchases that in that location, that's what changes. That's what restricts the location, is if that business no longer exists there at all. As I said, it's a land use. They don't look at the CUP and all that with the ownership, they look at it with the land use. So as long as there's, the way it's been explained, as long as there's a continuous ownership of that business at that location, it's not going to change. Unless the council changes it again sometime, future council, if the community gets out there and does their thing and gets it on a ballot to vote and do what they want to do, like we've done in the past with certain things, that's also a possibility. So is it a little more restrictive for a new business to open in a different location? Yeah, it is. But we've been working on that for months with lots of meetings and lots of public comment and lots of work sessions. And this is where we got.
Councilmember Barnwell.
So, Councilmember Kaufman, why the office residential zoning? Is that just because of the residential component? For targeting that particular district is not prohibiting more than other, yeah.
That's my understanding. It wasn't, that's what planning and zoning decided not, and we approved it, or are looking to approve it.
Okay. Any other comments? Councilmember
I was just thinking when Councilmember Calhoun was speaking, as far as like, that another business couldn't open in another location, I'm just curious if planning and, like, if Danny has, with all these restrictions, where would another business open, essentially? I don't know of a location with all these restrictions where another business could open, is what I was thinking. If they were to close down.
Go ahead, Councilmember Warner.
Thank you. Very interesting. We have really been talking about this for a long time, but just thinking about where are these other locations, I'm like running through my mind, where could this potentially happen? And I guess maybe I'm not spatially aware, I'm not sure, but I mean, there's a building across the street that is for sale that I'm assuming would not be office residential. Is that within 500 feet of a park? Is it?
Yes.
Yes, it can still be within 500 feet of a park. I was just trying to think of the other direction and trying to make myself, and then I'm thinking down 4th Avenue, or even 3rd Avenue that, we've got all of our whole house short-term rentals in. Those are auto commercial. Could it operate in any of those spaces? I don't know, but like I am trying to rack my brain a little bit around like where could this another potential business go? But that's also only if the business doesn't sell and it just completely shuts down, right? Because it sounds like it can continue to go on with the land of where it currently is operating at. Yeah, those are just my comments.
Yeah, that's a good point. Vice Mayor Hissom.
So I think one of the things that I'm kind of, a conclusion that I'm coming up with here during all of this discussion is that this is just almost another way of regulating it so much and restricting it so much that it's almost taking place of Title 8, which is the legalese end of it, not land use, but you're restricting land use so much that it may as well be in Title 8. So I'm thinking that it's just really a lot.
Okay. Councilmember Warner, yeah, that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, just looking through it, I'm almost wondering if this could just be another amendment of removing the additional areas that would be restricted, the park zone, playground, community center, licensed childcare facility. Is that really what the sticking point is? Because I'm not hearing any of the other pieces in here really truly being discussed. I mean, there's the whole part about, a marijuana establishment shall be in a permanent structure, with a valid certificate of occupancy. No marijuana establishment shall be in an authorized vehicle, trailer, etc. Like, that part's not being discussed, so I'm assuming that part's probably okay. The office residential zoning district, I feel like that should be residential. I'm also a little confused about what that is, because it's both. But anyways, that's a different point. But so anyways, what I'm saying is maybe what we need to be discussing is just making an amendment and removing those additional zones and continuing to move forward with this process because we have spent so much time on it.
I know this was, well, the only one that's really affecting the downtown business is the park zone because of Coabi Park, is that correct?
I can't speak with 100% certainty that playground would not as well. Yeah, the Dino Park is right behind
Because the
there.
playground's right behind
Yeah.
Columbia Park. So prior to this, at this point, before this, it's allowed even though it's 500 feet from the playground, the Dino Park there? I guess. Okay. Interesting. I think that was their point. Yeah, Councilmember Barnwell.
Could we send it back to planning and zoning and just have us, we're having a hard time visualizing what this actually limits. Could we punt it back to planning and zoning? I hate to do that, but just give us a visual. One, we've already said that we can only have two businesses in the community. So this further reduces the amount of, it's more restrictions, but I can't get a visual like on that. So it would be nice to have just a map to say, hey, they can have it in all this area.
Or,
As a laydown for us to look at.
okay. Councilmember.
I was going to say, Madam Mayor, rather than putting this back to planning and zoning, could we just, if people are not ready to actually make a decision on this tonight, can we just postpone it and have planning or community development come back at the next meeting with a visual for those that need that?
I was going to suggest that, and we have Danny back, so there's the question.
Yeah, sorry, packed house, I've been listening out there. It would be very difficult to provide a visual for you, because it's not like you put a dot on a park zone and it's like a 500-foot radius. It's 500 feet from the shortest pedestrian route between each two locations, and so to come up with a visual of what that looks like would be very nearly impossible. I think Vice Mayor Senga hit it on the head. It's like these new restrictions would almost make it impossible for locations to occur in the downtown area. As the other side of the bay gets more developed, potentially there would be room over there for one, but that's essentially what this ordinance would do.
And I have a sense that at the time, with the public sentiment at the time when this was being discussed with planning and zoning, this is where they were heading, so it's a different feel right now. So, sending it back for that, or to you, wouldn't accomplish what?
It would not be ideal.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Warner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor McClure. I guess maybe I'm just a little confused, and I think I might have missed something, because I thought we had finished this. Had it not been finished, was there always plans of something coming back to us?
So at the direction of council, following the motion, there was an ordinance passed that limited marijuana establishments in the community to 2, and then council directed planning and zoning to continue working on cleaning up the Title 15 language. Danny, correct me if there was anything additional.
The first joint work session, which was a couple of years ago, P&Z had their first draft of an ordinance recommendation, and there was a little break. We had a second work session, and the order of operations was that council would focus on Title 8 first, and then planning and zoning would revisit that initial Title 15 ordinance recommendation, so they could make a proper recommendation based on what you all had worked on in Title 8.
Councilmember Barnwell.
I kind of like Councilmember Cochran's idea of letting us rest on this for a little bit and the community to rest on it, so that there might be more people that would like to comment on this. We get more input to see where the community's at. Because
So you're suggesting postponing?
I do, yes.
A bit. I think there would be no harm in that. I mean, other than, well, you'll have to come back again. I mean, I don't know.
Other than loss of sleep every night for the last 3 years.
Well, Vice Mayor.
I'm just trying to envision how that would work. What are we going to schedule a work session? I mean, we're going to accomplish, but I mean, how would this actually come out?
That's true.
Postponing this and then taking comments and...
Well, we could vote on it tonight as amended.
And the version prior to this, these changes, is it a sustainable version? The one that, without all of this that is presented to us? If this was voted down, what sits as it is it doable, sustainable? Does it actually need anything?
Like, I mean, because the restriction already occurred in Title 8, that there can't be more than 2, what you decide on this really doesn't take
Change
effect
that.
until there is one less in town.
Okay, you need to say that again.
You in Title 8 restricted marijuana establishments to 2. We
Right.
currently have 2. So you're talking about where they can go in the future, but there can be no more in the future until one of the 2 operating established businesses ceases to exist.
Right.
And so there's no time urgency on what you're deciding in that regard, because there can't be a third marijuana establishment opening up inside city limits that would have to figure out 500 feet away. You know, we have 2, and you've already decided that is what the city's max is currently.
So,
So by voting, if we voted on this and it didn't approve,
right,
there's nothing going to happen with the establishments that are there now because there can't be any more establishments. There's nothing that's going to, no one's going to come in and have to be worried about 500 feet because the 2 establishments that are there are already conforming. They're already meeting everything that needs to be met.
Correct.
So what she's saying is if we vote no, nothing really changes from where we are right now. Is that the correct?
Yeah, because you'd be allowing
Small
current
words.
businesses to remain conforming, so you're making code for a future business that can't currently operate.
It
because
would
we're already
upset,
at our limit.
right. Okay. Well, I think we need to make some decisions, but yes, Councilmember Warner.
Yeah, I just want to make another clarifying statement too, that if this were to pass, that it also does not affect the current business's value because they're allowed in operation to sell their business and continue on with their operations because it transfers with the land with the date that's been placed in this. So I think that's also an important thing to know as well. It would only really be effective if they completely closed. Didn't sell their business, just shut down, shuttered the doors, closed the business.
That's true too. It's a tough one. So, Council, yes.
One more clarifying question. No part of this is required to finish the work we did earlier. Is that a true statement? Or we do need to make some?
No part of this is everything. You passed the resolution and completed that to limit it to 2 within inside city limits. That is done and completed. As Danny said, this is for future establishments.
And we have the existing Title 15, just without the amendments. Without this ordinance, there's still restrictions of where and such. Correct. Okay, Councilmember Warner.
Thank you. I would like to propose an amendment, which I just think that we, in H2, I would like to amend to remove park zone, playground, athletic field, community center, licensed child care facility, housing facility owned by a public housing authority, homeless, transient shelter, and that whole line there, just remove that. We've already got no establishment can operate within 500 feet of religious centers, correctional centers, recreational facilities. I almost feel like this is redundant, to be honest. I just think that one piece needs to be removed.
So your motion, you've made a motion?
Yes, I've made a motion under H2 to remove the whole section starting at park zone and ending at care facility.
We need a second, and then we can talk about it.
I'll second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, and you sort of did summarize. Okay. What do you think? Any discussion on that? I was going to suggest just pulling out park zone, but, you know, then playground, and, yeah. Want to vote on that? Okay. Would you restate the motion?
So on page 36 of the packet, in H2, Councilmember Werner her motion is to remove the bold underline italics section park zone all the way through care facility. Is that correct?
Correct.
And voting on that amendment, Werner,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Draper,
Yes.
Kreitz,
Yes.
Calhoun,
No.
Osenga,
Yes.
and Mayor McClure.
Yes.
So 6 in favor, that motion is passed.
Okay. Does that make the decision easier? Does that change anything? I know this is a pretty silly question. That doesn't change anything in any of the pages 37 and 38? That would be a question for Danny, perhaps. I mean, is there anywhere else in here that would affect, that we need to further amend?
Sorry, I just printed out the ordinance, I don't have the packet. What page? Is that the land use table?
Well, it's the table.
Oh, then no.
Yeah.
Okay. What you just did does not affect.
I just wanted for people listening to. Okay, does that make it an easier go? Because that seemed to be a sticking point. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's what I was going to say. Does that actually take out, I mean, as restrictive as it was, does that actually change the amount of restrictiveness there is in this proposed package?
Well, there are still additional restrictions in the land use table by eliminating the certain zones that some of the uses can be in, and creating no more outright allowed uses, because some of them have been turned into conditional use permit required.
We voted on that. So what do you think, guys? We could vote, we could not vote and postpone for further input and thought till the next meeting or something, which keeps people hanging. We could vote. And everybody is as indecisive as, yes, Vice Mayor.
I'm ready to vote. I'm just saying that's...
Okay. Yeah, get you notes. Are there any other amendments or such things that anybody wants to make before we commit to that? No? Okay, then I'm going to ask again, are we ready to vote? We seem to be.
This will be the final vote on Ordinance 2026-007, which includes the 2 amendments. Osenga?
No.
Warner?
Yes.
Draper?
No.
Barnwell?
No.
Kreitz?
No.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
No.
So that motion has failed.
Okay. Everybody's clear on what we just did? Seeing nods. Okay, thank you. Do we need a quick break? I think we probably could use one. I know she already took one. Some of us might want, let's take a 5-minute break. 8:28.
Okay, Mayor, order, we are back on the air.
I'm going to call the meeting back to order and get everybody back in without me pounding anymore. Okay, the meeting is called back to order at 8:29. We're a minute late. We're back. We have next, for a public hearing, Resolution 2026-064. When you're ready, Mr. Clerk, at least read that in, and then I'll explain.
Resolution 2026-064, approving an amendment to the 2025 electric utility tariff establishing a heat pump rate. And this was postponed on July 27th, 2026, and a second public hearing will be held due to requests from the public.
Okay, so it's already been moved and seconded. So we'll have administration speak in one moment, and then we'll have a public hearing again, and then we'll move directly to voting on this resolution. So, administration.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll invite Taylor Crocker and Mr. Hissom up to speak. Great, done.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, our continuation of the heat pump discussion from the last council meeting. So fortunately, we kind of discussed this at the last council meeting, but Russ Hissom's joining us from Wisconsin. He's actually not here to talk about heat pumps, but we're having these financial deep dive sessions, had the first one today, and then we have another one tomorrow. And then we also have the discussion item to follow this one on the financial future of the electric utility. So after we kind of had a stalemate at the last meeting, I figured it would be best for the guy that helped us perform the heat pump calculations on the different rates to kind of just give you a rundown on how we came to the conclusion of the subtract meter and the 8 cents per kilowatt hour. Russ?
Thank you. That was pretty much why we postponed it. So.
Thank you, Taylor. Madam Mayor and council members, thank you for having me, and nice to meet you all in person. Yeah, I worked on the draft rate study and was asked to design a heat pump rate as part of that. And when you design electric rates, you look at what are the unique characteristics of certain activities that use electricity, like a residential customer, a small commercial customer, an industrial customer, and so on. And heat pumps fall into that category. They have unique characteristics that, if used by a resident or a business or whatever, don't match the characteristics as if you bought a new refrigerator and plugged it in, because they place more demand on the system, they have different characteristics and things like that. So utilities that adopt heat pump rates generally, or that have a high heating capacity for heat pumps, generally have separate heat pump rates. And so in order to have a specific rate for an activity, you need to meter it to determine when it's being used and what it's being used for, what the output is, or what the use of electricity is for it. And that led to the design of the heat pump rate, modeling it after other heat pump rates that I've designed that, where you have 4 different alternatives for these. One of the alternatives was to have a demand rate and an energy rate. This number 4 rate has just a flat energy rate for that, which blends in the cost of the demand of the heat pump, and also has a separate customer charge because there's additional administrative time to bill, determine meter readings, things like that for the heat pump. So that's how we arrived at the rate that is in front of you this evening.
Okay. All right. Is there any other input from administration on this?
I would say maybe do the public hearing if there's specific questions afterwards.
Yeah,
you can ask,
that's my
answer
plan.
those.
I didn't know if you had...
No, not right now, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll get you back up here, okay? So I'll open the public hearing on Resolution 2026-064. Mr. Clerk, has anyone signed in for that?
Nobody has signed in for this one.
So is there anyone that would like to speak to this? Yeah, come on.
Phil Calusa, inside city limits. I didn't really make anything formal to speak about, but I guess when I look at this incentive rate and I do the simple math, this only works for the high-end homes. For lower moderate size homes, it's more expensive under this incentive rate than not having the incentive rate. That to me tells me this doesn't work. We either need a better incentive rate or just forget it all, which to me would break my heart because I really believe heat pumps offer, especially lower and moderate income families, an opportunity to save money on their heating bill at no cost to the other ratepayers. I offered initially this declining block rate proposal, which I ran by several PhD economists, one of them Steve Colt from now working for Alaska Center Power, Energy and Power, and Anthony Scott, who worked with the Regulatory Commission forever. They thought this was a wonderful idea because a declining block rate doesn't require all this hardware, which is what makes the incentive program pretty much useless for anybody but higher-end homes. So I've gone around for years. I've been researching heat pumps. We've done a study in Seward, over a dozen heat pumps have been monitored. We looked at the demand factor that was just recently mentioned, and it turns out it really isn't any different than a regular standard residential load. And I provided that info to Taylor at the utilities, but my problem is they give me no numbers. I have nothing to base what their decision was and how they came up with this. Most of you have gotten my little emails with all my math, which I know is too much, but I wanted to at least back up what I was recommending by numbers if somebody wanted to check on it. So I don't really know what to say. I don't think this is worthwhile pursuing with this kind of, benefit. If it only benefits the higher-end, wealthier homes and leaves the little people out in the cold, because the math just doesn't work. When you have to pay for that meter base and you have to pay for that monthly fee, you've pretty much destroyed all that incentive. So I guess my recommendation is please let's come up with an incentive rate and to encourage heat pumps. Norway has 2/3 of their households are heated by heat pumps. They'd rather sell their oil to outside than burn it in their own country. And they have the advantages of renewables and stuff. So I think there's a lot of potential. I just don't think this is the right one to go with. I think what we're doing is we're being, what was the term, penny wise but pound foolish. We're spending a lot of money for what? What are we saving by putting in meters? Yes, there will be a few kilowatts that fall under the subsidy, but if you do the math, the economics aren't there to justify the thousands and thousands of dollars of meters and stuff. So I guess my recommendation is we, vote no, and let's see if we can come up with something better. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Anyone else wishing to speak to this? We heard from some folks last time. Okay, seeing none, there's no one left in the hallway, I'm assuming, since I see some of you have moved in. Okay, last chance. I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. What we'll do is discuss, ask questions, and then proceed to the voting on the resolution. It's got it separately here, but this is the way. Okay. Councilmember Calhoun.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a question maybe you guys can answer for me. I tried to look up a couple things and maybe I'm just not that smart. The CEA, HEA, and MEA have a separate rate, a separate heat pump rate?
No.
I know that HEA has a rebate program that can be up to $1,000 total, $500 for the individuals purchasing and $500 towards paying for the installation to the installers. And then there's also the ACES program that's out there, that's a 5-year program that has $39 million in it to give up to I think $8,500 in, you know, rebates or assistance for people that want to purchase heat pumps. And so I guess I'm not really in favor of a separate rate, partially because we don't really even know what we're gonna do with the utility yet. And maybe if we wanted to look at, you know, down the road, maybe a rebate program of some kind, something like that, that there's no meters involved, there's, you know, there's not an additional cost like that, but I know it would be a cost as far as the rebate goes, but it'd be like a one-time expense for us. So I'm not really in favor of moving forward with a separate rate at this point.
Councilmember Barnall.
This is a question I think for Brian or Taylor. I know that reading the ADN this week, that the rail belt is in serious need of natural gas, and that there might be, natural gas shortages this winter. It's actually a very real possibility. So I just don't understand why we buy our energy from Chugach. They might be running out of fuel and doing blackouts. Why would we be jumping into incentivizing using more electricity that uses natural gas that the railroad doesn't have? Is there
an answer to that?
Thank you, Madam Chair and council members for having me up here. There's the potential for short-term deliverability problems. Those are deliverability at this point, not as much the availability of gas, it's just not being able to get it out of the ground at the moment you need it. So that's kind of an important distinction. There will be availability shortfalls in the next 5 or 6 years, maybe 10 years, so that's true. I think we brought forward the heat pump rate because there's just been kind of I'd say there's kind of a lot of noise about it in the community. We hear a lot about it, and if the community wants a heat pump rate, we had Russ develop one. It's kind of in line with what they have in Cordova and what they have in Juneau, and so that's why we did it. I don't think it's going to hugely increase the electric demand for this utility in the near term, because it's a large investment. People have to move, change over their, their heating system. That's a $20,000 bill right there, I think. You may augment it and stuff, but it's spendy. So that's the reason we brought it forward, because we felt like we were getting a lot of community input that there needed to be a heat rate, and so we looked at what a practical one is, and the way it's been implemented in some other places that are very similar to us.
Okay, to answer your question. Yes, Councilmember Drake.
Yeah, first of all, I make a brief disclosure that I am a heat pump user, and I also probably the poster child for the person that has a tiny heat pump with a big house, that I might be trying to extract some extra energy if we didn't have the meters. And then also that my son is an installer that stands to benefit from installing heat pumps. So just, I've been informed this is not a conflict of interest, but I thought the appearance might be there, so I thought I'd disclose that. But then I want to acknowledge all the work that has gone into this, from PACAV, from Phil, from you guys. I realize that there's a tremendous amount of effort that went into developing this. I want to acknowledge that. And when it first came to us, I thought, the whole idea, this is a triple win situation, because we're helping the environment, we're reducing rates for consumers, and we're all going to increase our electrical sales. But, I've been listening to the public comments, and since our last meeting, I've kind of been given pause, because, I'm not sure this actually saves people money, like Phil was saying, especially the small user may not save money with this, having to purchase the meter. And we talked about possibly, what if the utility provided the meter and waived the $10 fee? Well, then maybe, that would work, and that is something to consider. I'm also wrestling with whether this would ever, like you just said, would this actually grow our sales? Are people most of the people we've heard from are existing users, so we're just moving from one rate category to another. So I'm not sure if it's going to grow demand. you would think if anything was going to grow the demand, it's these rebates that are offered through ACES, and they're two different ones. One of them is for low income, where it's up to $8,500 to install heat pumps. I do know they're doing some new installations right now. There's a fourplex that went in either in Phil's subdivision or Hilltop that's going to be using heat pump for in-floor heat through the whole, system, and I'm anxious to see how that works. That should be if people can model that kind of system. So anyway, I'm trying to balance encouraging innovation and making sure we're creating a program that provides really value to our residents and to our utility too. So I'm concluding that heat pumps don't save people money, but I'm not sure this is the right program, for what we want to do. And also, what's the fate of our utility? We don't know that. It's fairly imminent that we're going to be making some changes, but I really would like to reinvestigate the declining block rate idea.
Okay. Other comments? Are we ready to vote? Yes, yes, yes. We're ready to vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Voting on the approval of Resolution 2026-064. Draper.
No.
Kreitz.
No.
Barnwell.
No.
Warner.
No.
Calhoun.
No.
Osenga.
No.
And Mayor McClure.
No.
That motion has failed.
Okay, well, that was the voting business tonight. Now we'll get these guys back up here. We have a new business, other new business, discuss electric department updates with Brian Hickey and Russ Hissom.
What's that?
Oh, that's you guys.
Yes, thank you. We have a late, all passed out.
No.
Told at our financial meeting today that people want paper copies that they can keep notes on, so.
That's a thing.
So that's what I'm doing. I'll make this all work.
Thanks, Brian. You need the clicker for the PowerPoint?
And right on Kevin. Excuse me, thank you for having us. We've already introduced Russ Hissom. Russ has been working with me. We've developed I'll call it a financial model to evaluate on the various alternatives as to where to go with the utility. And wrapped into that is the Godwin 4th of July project. And some people have asked, like, why are you wrapping that project into this broader discussion about what to do with utility? And I think the reason is it's integral to the decisions that the community makes about the utility. And you'll see that through a couple slides that I'm going to put a slide up here, and I'm already going to apologize for the size of it. We have individual graphs of each of these graphs, but in our discussions when we were putting the PowerPoint together this afternoon, we said, well, let's keep it simple and straightforward. At the financial meeting that we had from 10 to 3 today, and we're having another version of it tomorrow, we go into much greater detail on this, and so I'll just kind of take off from there. So, a little background, the roadmap, what we've completed. Most of you are aware, better than I am, of the 2023 votes to dispose the utility, and then there was a 2-year moratorium. And that moratorium expired in October of 2025. So in preparation for that, in the spring of 2025, we received guidance to start evaluating this, and we pushed out we contracted with Northern Compass. Shauna Toma is back there. She's kind of the head of all that stuff for us. And so we completed our first survey, and we held 3 town hall meetings in September 29th of 2025, if you'll recall. We brought the CEOs of the other Seaboard utilities, Cordova, Copper Valley, a board member from Kodiak, to kind of talk a little bit about what those what their experience was as a small utility, sort of on the scale of City of Seward. In December, we had the CEO, a couple of the CEOs, and at least executive team representatives from the Railbelt Utilities, Golden Valley, MEA, Chugach, and Homer, and they sort of talked about their vision of the way the world works. And in May, we brought former Senator Begich, and he talked about his experience at the municipality of Anchorage, where they created a municipal organization, a municipal utility authority for the Anchorage telephone utility a number of years ago. And now we're in the middle of these financial deep dives, and I'm going to just, on a coming slide, I'm just going to give you the sort of the high-level output, but we are going through, been working with the community. We had 10 people there, maybe 11 today, and I think we'll have 10 people there tomorrow, and we spent 4 hours and kind of walked through in great detail the actual finances. They've asked a lot of great questions. We're going to take that information back and revise how we share this with folks in ways that are maybe more understandable for non-utility people. So that's kind of where we are today. The next, as I said, the next deep dive is tomorrow. In our alternative analysis to date, we've sort of identified 3 possible paths. And one path that we call the as-is co-op is just changing the governance model to a municipal agency or one of the 2 co-op models. One is a sale to a co-op, and the other is a franchise co-op that kind of has some similarities with Providence and the Sea Life Center. So those are sort of the 3 versions of the as-is governance-only model. And then there's what I call the local control build Godwin. And you really, if you take any of those 3 models and you construct the Godwin 4th of July hydroelectric project, it has, as you'll see in the next slide, a significant change in rates. It decreases rates, like by 50% under fair conditions when you turn it on. It's the economics of it, and I'm surprised I heard Steve Colt's name brought up, because I took the spread to model and sent it to Colt up at ASAP. He's got a doctorate in economics from MIT. I said, these numbers look really good. Just before I go public with these, someone needs to back me up on this. And I had Russ look at it, and together we think that this model is pretty accurate. It's not perfect, it's a model. So at any rate, that's the local control Bill Godwin. And it's, you got to do one of these governance things, and then the question is, if you're going to do one of the governance things, there's a question, do you build Godwin or not? So we've put two cases, 2 alternatives in for that. And then finally, you have the one that you all looked at in 2023, and that's the sale of the utility. And so when we use the numbers for the sale of the utility that you see, we used Matanuska Electric's average cost of electricity. And they, at the time we did it, were the lowest. That Chugach and MEA kind of bounced back and forth, but they're within less than a penny of each other. So those are sort of the 3 paths. Form one of these governance models, take one of those governance models and build Godwin, or don't, and then, or just sell the thing and wash your hands of the electric utility industry altogether. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about Godwin, because it's so critical when you get to the slide, the next page. It sort of gives you a visual of what it would do to rates. We anticipate that this year, we've applied for a preliminary permit to study the project and develop a license application for FERC. We believe we will get that application before the end of the year, and we believe that because under the Federal Energy Power Act, there is a specific section that requires FERC to issue, if there is a municipal applicant for that project, FERC is required to give the project to that group over a co-op or investor-owned utility or anybody else. So we don't think there's really a challenge to that, meaningful challenge to that, but we have to let that play out over the next 6 months. I'm thinking it was 6 to 8 months from April, so it'll be towards the end of the year, maybe early next year. After that, we would begin developing a license application, and that's a spendy operation. That requires, we're estimating about $23 million to develop a license application. So before we would undertake that activity, we would reach out to the state and try to, ideally through ADA or AEA, try to get a bond advance note which would finance this project until it was used and useful, and then you can roll those costs into the long-term debt, and that's the way the model's built. So we would do that. So in 2030, once the license is issued, we'd have the bond advance note negotiated. 2031, construction would begin, and we estimate it's probably 2 to 3 years. So Godwin and 4th of July would be in service by 2033. An important point that might get a little confusing is that, and what makes this project the numbers so compelling is that the federal government has modified the investment tax credit so that they will pay 50% of the project cost, up to 50%. And the way that works is the initial investment tax credit is a 6% tax credit. If you use Davis-Bacon labor and meet their apprenticeship requirements, it's 30%. If your community is an energy disadvantaged community, which Seward falls under that designation, under both DOE and the Rural Utility Services, there's a map that you can look at, you get another 10%. And if you can use all the equipment under the Build America Better Act, like we're doing with the shore power, you get 50%. And so really what that does is that takes the cost of this hydroelectric project, which hydroelectric projects typically would cost you 2 to 3 times what a gas turbine takes to build. That's why we have all the gas turbines. And and gas turbine prices have come up, it makes the hydro projects about the same cost on dollars per kW installed capacity as a gas turbine. The difference is a hydroelectric project lasts 50 years, gas turbine lasts 25 years, and the fuel for a hydroelectric project is free. And so what you're doing is you're building for the cost of an equivalent thermal unit and the reason we don't build many hydro projects is because the front end cost is so high normally. But with that 50% contribution from the feds, it really is a game changer. So, but to get I got off on a little bit of a tangent there, but to get the ITC, you have to break ground by 2033. With the schedule we have here, we could be complete by 2033. So we have some float in that schedule. But we have to break ground by 2033. And then you have to wait about 1.5 years to get the direct pay tax credit. And the way that works is under the Inflation Reduction Act, we were able, as the co-ops, to push through in the Inflation Reduction Act what's called direct pay. And what that means is that prior to that time, non-taxable entities could not take advantage of investment tax credits because we don't pay taxes. But with the direct pay provisions of the IRP, the Treasury basically writes you a check if you're a nonprofit for the investment tax credit that would have been given to a taxable entity. And so you get direct payback, but you have to finish the tax year out, file your tax return, and then the IRS, the Treasury sends you a check for it. So that's sort of the timeline on it. And in the model, we've done a lot of looking at how this would play out, and some of the major assumptions we have are, in that model, that particular case, and you'll see that there are 3 of them, we've set customer rates at the distribution system cost of service floor, which is somewhat lower than what we're setting rates at right now. And that is due to the fact that we are doing a rate study in parallel with all this other stuff, and when we bring that rate study to you, we've set the rates on this case at that level, which it's a draft right now and we're fleshing it out, but we believe those rates are legitimate. And if you use the current rates today, it doesn't matter, the numbers are so compelling, and it doesn't matter. Power above local needs, so the project we believe will generate initially about twice as much power as Seward uses, and we would sell that into the grid, either through a firm power agreement or as economy energy to the various utilities. And we've calculated the incremental rate that's based on how they buy economy energy today, and then escalated that using fuel escalators. Remainder, the investment tax credit, we could be 30 to 50. We believe you would just design and do the project to get 50%. It's not that hard, and we have enough float if we had a problem with a BABA compliant device or something that we could work that out. The remainder is financed by, once we've built it and it's used and useful, we do a 25-year financing with the RUS or CFC or CoBank, and then that bond has a 50% balloon payment, and then you refinance it in 25 years, and thus you get the 50-year life. So you're amortizing the project over the life of the FERC license that you're getting. Let's see, remaining, blah, blah, blah. The sale case, the addition, so we also make the assumption it's pretty legit that I think Godwin is going to get built, whether it's built by Seward or the rail belt in general, they're going to build it. The numbers are just too compelling. But when you mix that in with the loads of one of the likely purchasers, it doesn't move the needle on their rates very much because it's huge for Seward. About 100 gigawatt hours out of, say, Chugach generates, I think, almost 1,800 gigawatt hours a year. MEA 750,000 or 750 gigawatt hours. Really, this is 100. So it isn't going to move the needle much for those guys. And so we just made that assumption. The fuel portion of the rates is based on current fuel usage. Load growth is based on what I call current trends, and then we used MEA's average cost. And I went through those in detail because I think that's an important slide. Now, I won't spend a lot of time on the rest of this, but we developed 4 cases: a worst case, a mid case, a base case, and a best case. And so we took all the variables that we were using to calculate the rates, and in the worst case, we made them worse by 50%. So the interest rates were 50% higher, the load was, the production of the plant was 50% lower, the cost of construction was up by 50%, and we tried to kind of bracket the universe of problems and say, on the poor case, this is as bad as it can get. In fact, the load for Seward, we assumed we dropped 10,000 megawatt hours of load. That essentially means like the two big, the JAG and OBI pulled out next year. So, and we're just trying to set what's the worst could happen to us on this side. And then on the other side, we have the exception or the best case, and that is, it's a sunny world. The interest rates are down, the thing produces more power than we expected, construction costs come in under budget, and so we have that on the right side. And then we have a base case, a mid case, and a base case in between. And base case is kind of where we're at right now. It's how much energy we use right now. It's current interest rates. It's our current estimates for construction. And mid case is about 12.5 to 25% worse. So it's not quite as bad as the crazy. I don't really think the poor case is a realistic case, but it does kind of balance the universe of probabilities and somewhere in between. So if we summarize the key variables, in the worst case, if you look at the base case, which is the second column from the right, we have the project putting out 125,000 megawatt hours. We currently consume about 56 to 59,000 megawatt hours. And when it gets bad, we drop that to a mid case is 100, worst case is 75, and the best case is 150. We do the same thing with the Seward's load. You can see we go as low as 42 and as high as 70. Construction and permitting, we move it up to 150% of what our estimate is and down to 75% of our estimate. And kind of a check on reality is the line where it says installed cost, construction in dollars per kW. So the Bradley Lake project cost, if its cost brought forward in time using the Bureau of Labor Standards CPI indicator calculator, would come in at about $5,700 per kW installed capacity. So somewhere between our mid and our base case is where Bradley Lake came in, and we derated that by 15% because the Bradley Lake project was an extremely difficult project to build. It was across Kachemak Bay. The top of the mountain was helicopter access only, so all the heavy equipment had to be broken down in pieces and heavy lifted to the top. There was a 13-foot, 3-mile tunnel. Not like this. Keep moving. Sorry.
Keep moving.
Okay. So, and then we have the debt and surplus. The outputs are, you see in this graph, and I won't read through these, but you can look at them. This is the rates under the worst, mid, and base case for the 3 options, as is local bill Godwin or sale. And then the next one, this is a graph of them over the 50-year life of the project. And what's interesting in that is the green line is selling the cost of energy that you would get if you sold the project. The orange line is if we just converted the ownership of the utility and continued to go on purchasing power like we do. And the blue line is what happens to rates if you build the Godwin hydroelectric project. And, you can see in the poor case, the sale is the clear winner in the poor case. Everything's more expensive. In the moderate case, it takes about 5 years for Godwin to outpace the two others, and the price just keeps dropping off. In the base case where we are right now, it drops off even more quickly, the blue line, and in the exceptional case, the drop-off is even steeper. And what we'll do next is do a net present value of the difference of those dollars based on a 6% discount rate, so you can kind of have some numbers to compare the various projects in the portfolio. Okay, where we're at next, we'll do a second survey. It will go out next week. Is that me?
Chris, do we know what that noise is?
Sure.
No? Okay.
Hit the remote.
What's that?
Oh,
It's what?
when you put the remote next to the... No.
Pretty desperate. Is yours on? Okay, we'll be done. We're on the last slide. Turn it off.
Reduce that.
Does that work for, we're on TV, right? We're not here yet.
Just talk a little louder.
Okay.
There you go. You don't need to press anything.
Oh, got it, I'm on.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing, we're gonna do rerun the survey, we've changed the questions around a little bit, but we're trying to keep it as similar as possible to the prior survey. We've taken some of the input from the town halls. That'll go out on August 19th, roughly August 19th. We'll have a fourth town hall meeting and a council presentation on September 28th, where we kind of bring all this together. Well, that went.
It's just the ceiling.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not even the other part.
In that, we'll have the survey results, we'll have a summary financial analysis, we're gonna take some of the input we got today and tomorrow, and then we'll also, we hope to bring up some representatives of the NOECA who will be in Anchorage. Hopefully some representatives of the NRECA will be here to, they can talk to us a little bit about the national cooperatives, all that stuff. The Alaska Power Association's annual meeting, it starts on the 29th, so I think they'll be in town. And last, I think we would have a work session with the council, and I put November 23rd in there just by looking at the council calendar. I've not checked that out with anybody on my team or anything else. It just seemed like that might be a good time to do that. And then, at that point, we would do a complete alternatives presentation, and then kind of the ball is in y'all's court. What do you want to do? Any questions? Russ is here to back me up if I lied about anything.
It's important to hear all that.
I wrote down a whole bunch of questions, but I think I'll wait for the deep dive tomorrow.
Go over it tomorrow.
Okay, yeah.
Plenty of time.
Anything? Go ahead.
Did I miss something? Are we doing a deep dive tomorrow?
Too close to it.
Sorry, there's a small group presentations that people were able to sign up for a deep dive, both today and tomorrow, but you don't have a meeting tomorrow.
Not with you, no. You're welcome to come, but.
Yeah, I do that. Thanks. Good presentation. I love that.
Sorry. He was like, I don't know, we should do more. He's going, I think you should do less. This was less. This was very fun. This was a lot less than where I was going. So.
Just a couple simple questions. Number one, just to get my head around that capacity over there. Are we talking a 20 megawatt project then, or is it
30.
bigger now, 30?
Somewhere between 30 and 40 would it
Because our
support.
daily load's somewhere around,
10.
yeah.
That's in capacity, but our energy is about 56,000 megawatt hours. It would generate about 100,000 megawatt hours of energy over the course of the year.
Why is it better to increase our load within the town rather than just selling it? If we use 10, we stay at 10, we have this excess in the hydro capacity, sell it
So
back out.
you're going to have, look, in this perfect world, your rates would be half what the railboat rates are right now. People will move here and build things because that in the out years, you're at like 8-9 cents a kilowatt hour. That's like the Pacific Northwest under the Bonneville projects. I mean, I don't think you're going to have the choice on whether you want load growth or not. It's going to come here for better or worse. I guess that's another way to look at it.
Okay, third question. Sorry. Why did you base it at 20, your sale, they're all pretty dang low considering we're probably going to import or paying for a pipeline.
Well, over the course, we started it with I used MEAs, all of our current rates, and then I escalated them based on, in 4 cases with different escalators, based on the best and worst case estimates that we're going to see in Cook Inlet gas prices by 2035. And then after that, I tapered off the escalation out through the rest of the project. So the fuel over the life of it has been, for each of the alternatives, has been escalated to what we believe is going to happen when we either build the AK LNG pipeline or we have to import gas from. That's taken into account in there, in the model.
Sorry, it seems a little low considering we're going to pay 25 cents a kilowatt.
Well, that's today, right?
2045, that's.
Yeah, well, and one thing is, this is in today's dollars, in nominal dollars, so it doesn't include any inflation, right? I didn't put inflation, it's nominal dollars. And what we've heard, a couple things, the fuel portion of the bill you pay is about 29, under MEA right now, 29.74% of their bill in 2025. So 29.74% of your bill is going to go way up.
Yeah.
But it's not the whole bill, right? Because that's the cost of power. Fuel is about 81% of the cost of power, and the cost of power is combined is about 29% of your whole bill. And so it's as an electric utility, it's a reason, I wouldn't say reasonably small. It's a quarter of your bill is going to go up a lot, but that doesn't move your whole bill up. And what's happening over that same period in time, load is growing. And so the base rate portion of your bill is going down, and we've got some assumptions in there for load growth, but if you grow the load and sell more kilowatts for the same base rate cost, the cost per kilowatt goes down. And so load growth works in opposition to those increasing fuel prices. And so they sort of meet and moderate each other over time. It was a good exercise for me, because you don't really, I'm sure someone else in the robot's done this, but, to sit down and put it all, and actually put it all out there, and all the pluses and minuses, and how much of this and how much of that, it's educational for me.
Last question, I think, is what I hear you saying, and I think we've always known this, is a small community has many more advantages on these loan rates and...
You have optionality,
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Versus a large entity like Chugach or...
I mean, Chugach can get good rates, but it's a law of large numbers thing. It would take a massive project, 100 times the size of this, to change the rates at Chugach, like this is going to change the rates for this little community. It's a law of large numbers thing. The bigger you get, the harder it is to move the needle. It's a big ship,
I guess
all those analogies.
I guess my point was, that's a good point. That's a really important point. But the other point is that because we're a small community, there are federal incentives that we can tap into.
Yeah, but I would also say, Chugach could get our U.S. rates for long-term loans and stuff. That's not, CFC and CoBank, they loan to MEA. Well, yeah, we're pretty small in the big folks up here are pretty small in the big picture of the way that the world works. But, yeah.
Thanks.
Other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And our final thing is to discuss the political sign rules and regulations. Councilmember Calhoun brought this, and he's got some ideas to throw out there, so I'm just going to turn it right over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What kind of stimulated this was what has happened in the last couple of weeks locally, where an individual was sent notification because there was a complaint, I guess, about the signage on his property, but no other notifications were sent out to other properties that had similar violations of the current code. And so my thought was, what I would like to see happen, because I do believe there is a First Amendment issue here with this, and looking at some of the other communities and what they do and don't do, we are a little more restrictive in some ways. And as I've stated in the past, I am a First Amendment absolutist. You say whatever you want to me, but then I also have the right to respond. So what I would like to see us do is to suspend the current political sign portion until after this election cycle is over, because it's kind of an interesting election cycle for us. We have a state, we have a federal senator or a federal representative, we have a governor's election, we have a state senator, state representative, we've got propositions, so there's a multitude of issues for us to look at and vote on and advocate for. And so, telling somebody you have to pick one issue or one candidate to show your support for, I think is a bit restrictive. And I would just like us to see us suspend that, and then after this election cycle, we can take a look at it, we can address the First Amendment issues, make sure that we are not overly restricting people's voices, regardless of their political affiliation. And that's my thought on bringing this forward.
And this is just a discussion. I'd also like to see within that suggestion, though, what is the current regulation for taking them down after the election? 2 weeks. And so I'd like to see people adhere to that rather than just leave them up all winter kind of thing. But this sounds, the exception this time, besides everything else, is there are a lot of reasons to put up multiple signs because there are multiple elections, and how do you choose which is your most important one, So, I don't hear from the rest of you guys. Vice Mayor.
Well, I was just going to say that I don't really believe that it was our intent to infringe on anybody's First Amendment rights, and I don't think it was actually our intention to limit them to one political sign on their property. I don't know how we got here, but who we are, and I think that in the future, very soon, this will actually be addressed and be taken care of, I'm hoping. I'm thinking that's what's going to happen, so.
Yeah, I will just add, Madam Mayor, from the administrative standpoint, we look at the code and enforce it as written, and after the changes last year, we removed political signs entirely from the sign code, thus making them temporary signage. While the code didn't change at all for what was allowed, I definitely appreciate Councilmember Calhoun for bringing this forward, because we immediately saw how that real impact is felt in the community. So I appreciate all of the community members for coming up and saying, hey, this doesn't work for us. I think having a suspension of this so that we as a city aren't navigating that enforcement for the remainder of the election cycle is something that our staff would be very excited about. And then we can look forward to following the election, bringing forward something to address the sign code so that it's more in line with, I think, our general intent.
And I do know that planning and zoning in the past has suggested looking at the sign code themselves and doing something, so that might be another option. Councilmember Barnwell.
Yeah, I agree with all the comments. I think it's a good idea. I think the size, though, if we could adhere to the size limitation, personally, for safety, if not other reasons, would be a good idea.
As a suggestion at this point for people, you mean, or?
Yeah, I don't know. Well,
Because if
we're taking away the whole,
that was the suggestion from.
so your 2-week thing post would be a suggestion also. So we're doing both.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just troublesome seeing them up all winter like some have been in the past, but at this point, if we're suspending it, how long are we suspending it for, Councilmember Calhoun?
Until 2 weeks after the election.
Okay, so that's a suggestion. Yeah, I mean, it's reasonable to take down what you put up. I mean, I know when I've had signs up in the past, I've taken them down the next morning, but that's just me, so. And there were small signs, easy to take down. So, what do you think, guys? Yeah.
So would we be suspending all temporary signs, since political signs are considered temporary signs? Is that what we mean? So any temporary sign is rule suspended?
No, I would just take it as the guidance of that purview within it. I think Sam, when I was not at the office earlier, made a good point of, sometimes the police officer can give people a warning. We can also just not enforce this in the same way. Not that we would give a warning, but just say, oh, we'll come back to this the next time. Sam, did you have a better way of explaining that?
No, it's just, I mean, you're right, I mean, that's the concept, is you have discretion enforcement in general, and you could just, council could tell you, or you could tell the council, that we will exercise enforcement by refraining from enforcing the sound rules, political signs. Whatever parameters, that's fair enough.
Okay, I have a clarification question then. We have the primary election and then we have the real election in November. So we've got signs up now for the primary election. Those people who have been eliminated by the primary election, can we suggest they take those signs down, but do they leave up the other ones, or do they, I mean, how are we regulating that?
2 weeks after the primary.
Okay, that's your suggestion.
For those that are eliminated.
For those eliminated. That makes some clarification sense. And then we will address this in the future. Are we okay with that? Okay. Have you figured out what that is? Because
Is it the mics entirely? If you want to just turn the speakers off and see.
This is the
only hot light.
Oh, they're all hot.
You could turn off the power strip here and see if that.
Yeah, go for it.
Of it though?
Yeah, we have the.
Yeah, I guess we'll just.
Our power to the radio.
That's true.
And they're back
The
on.
radio feed was doing this, so. I was listening to it in the van right before I came back in, and it was bad.
Okay.
We're back on.
Would you like to proceed with the mics on or off?
We better have them on. See what happens. Okay, we're at citizen comments. There's no sign up, and you get up to 5 minutes, considering the hour, maybe don't use all 5. Some, we got a few things, but, any citizens wanting to comment? This is your shot. And so we're gonna give a mic to the...
That's all right, I can talk loud.
That is very loud. And we need your name and inside or outside, I'm sorry.
Tim Olshakoff, outside city limits. Madam Mayor, council members, oftentimes elected officials are asked to make decisions where there's no obvious answer, where reasonable people in our community may strongly disagree. In those situations, it can be tempting to gauge the temperature of the room and allow the people that show up that evening to heavily influence that decision. Public comment is extremely important, and people who take the time to participate should absolutely be heard. But we also have to recognize that people sitting in this room represent a small sample of the residents of Seward. A packed room can tell you that an issue matters deeply to the group of people, and it does not necessarily tell you what the community as a whole believes. For some of the larger questions that fundamentally affect the direction of our community, I don't think that we should overlook the option of putting that question directly before voters when that option is legally available and appropriate. There's nothing wrong with representative government, that is why we elect city council, but representative government also has mechanisms for asking people directly when an issue significant enough warrants it. When there's a deep division, significant long-term consequences, and no clear community consensus, allowing broader electorate to weigh in can give the council something much more meaningful than the temperature of one room in one evening. It gives you a voice of the community itself. And ultimately, if our goal is to govern Seward in a way that reflects the desire of the people that live here, I think that option should remain firmly on the table. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Come on, Linda. We still need your name and all that.
Linda Paquette, outside city limits. I want to thank you for what I believe was doing the right thing tonight. And I think one of the indicators that you all were aware of is that you've all, and also planning and zoning, and also I assume the attorneys, have spent an inordinate amount of time on Ordinance 007 and the creation of it and all of the stuff that went into it. And while I appreciate Councilmember Warner's concern that, gee, we have so much time invested in this, can't we save up time? I think another way to look at it is, when something is so arduous to get to some legal answer, it's a good clue that you're sort of off the rails. Because when somebody personally comes in and tries to make a personal vendetta law, we're in trouble. And I think you all, whether you want to publicly acknowledge it or not, that is what this ordinance was a personal vendetta against a particular couple and their two businesses. Somebody wasn't paying attention and didn't realize that this was all happening, and then all of a sudden they became aware of it, and they tried to back in to stop it. And that earlier ordinance with all the parks was the ground for this. And it's really kind of devious governance, right? It's sort of what the Heritage Foundation has done with over the last 50 years. Well, we'll just go quietly in and we'll tweak this, fully knowing that their intention is to come back and lay something on top of it that is very specific to their individual desires and wants. And I think you dodged a real bullet tonight, and I'm really proud of you. I'm proud of the thought and consideration that you put into it, and I'm really glad for the decision you made. You've already limited it to 2 businesses in town. And really, to take, it's legal medicine is what it is. It's legal medicine. It doesn't even compare to alcohol. It's medicine to most people. The CBD products, I mean, there are people here on council that actually probably advise people in taking CBD products. So to consider that you're going to take a medical resource away from people, that was a heavy burden that you were facing, and so I really do think you made the right decision. About the signage, you know, if you go to places like Carmel by the Sea in California, when there's a political race, they allow political signs because it's a First Amendment right, but they're all small. They don't make the town look ugly. And I think with the original sign ordinance that you passed, I think that was the actual intent. But, so maybe it's not the number of signs, maybe it's simply the size of the signs and the date that they have to come down by. And then it's really on the onus of the city to enforce that. So when you see one of these great big huge signs go up, that would be in violation. But if they had a small sign and they had 10 of them, it would be okay. If there's 10 issues on the ballot, one sign per issue, not 5 near patrol signs in a row, but one, that's one issue. The ballot initiative is another issue. So the number of signs, and maybe you max it out at no more than 10, but they have a size limit on them. That doesn't then make this town trashy, because it really kind of does at the moment, honestly. So anyway, I love you guys, I appreciate the work, I know it's not easy, and I'm glad you're all here, and really, that's the only hot mic concern here from what I can tell, especially sitting in the van and in the hallway.
Okay, anyone else? Let's take Becky first, and then I'll get you over there.
I'm going to get down the middle.
Oh, well, come on up then.
I have no intention of speaking. Kelly Moore, outside the city. Restricted speech is infringed speech. Size, color, location, condition, etc. In parentheses of a certain time limit, it makes sense to allow political speech, but when we start restricting how, when, where, what color, what size, what shape, then we're starting to go down a very slippery slope. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, inside the city. I'm here on the sign, but a totally different aspect. I would like to have you clarify the kind of a temporary sign thing, the banners on the boardwalk. Also, I would like a clear and cut, who can put them there, for how long, whatever. We noticed that we were told we couldn't put one up, we were told we could, and we were told we couldn't, but when they noticed there's others out there that are nonprofit and aren't having an activity. And this is in no way, shape, or form anything against the Parks and Rec. Those guys are doing a great job, and we are all their announcements free. Well, they do a really good job of, they provide us with the audio, and they have a blast doing it. So it's entertaining to listen to them. But whatever you do with any codes, rules, regs, signs, or anything, make sure it applies to one, applies to all, and I would like to see why you're addressing that, to address the signs on banner too. You know what I mean, on the boardwalk by the pond. Okay, thank you. Oh, and thank you all for being up there. It's not easy.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it to council and administration comments and responses to citizen comments, and I will begin with Madam City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have no comments tonight. I appreciated them.
Thank you. Councilmember Draper.
I appreciate all the public comments tonight. A couple things made me a little bit sad tonight. It was really sad to vote down a heat pump rate when we finally got one, but I think it was the right decision at the time. It was sad to vote down something that PACA put so much work into and got so much public comment on. And that I really appreciated the citizen comment regarding remember the vote of the people. That was, I thought, a good suggestion we might take into consideration for some of the tougher issues. That's all I can say.
Councilmember Kreitz. No comment? Councilmember Calhoun.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not a lot. I have a lot of First Amendment verbiage to spew out, but I'm not going to do all that tonight. It's been a long night. One thing that I will say concerning the citizens initiative process it is something that I've been talking to people about for quite a while. If you don't like what the council has done, if you have a group that wants to see something happen, the citizens initiative process is always there. It's worked in the past, we've used it. We got rid of a unfair sales tax numbers of years ago by using that process. And all I will say is that it's still out there, regardless of what the council has passed or done tonight, last meeting, the next meetings to come. You can always use the citizens initiative process to put something on the ballot and make it happen. So don't forget that. And I do appreciate everybody's comments tonight. As I said, I am a First Amendment absolutist. I don't think that our intentions with signage has ever been to limit people's freedom of speech. We will look at that once this election cycle's over and everybody can just kind of settle out and we can get the attorneys working on it and we can do the right thing.
Councilmember Warner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to thank everybody that came out and made public comment today. It's really important for us to hear from the public, especially those who are newer to coming and speaking at council. I really appreciate those that did. And I definitely want to echo what was spoken about the ballot initiative. I do think that is a really great path forward on any of the decisions that might come before us or any decisions that might come in the future if anybody wants to take on the citizen initiative. And then one last thing is school starts next Wednesday the 19th. So school buses will be running, kids will be at bus stops. Please just keep an eye out for them as they're getting back into their winter routine. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember.
Yeah, some tough decisions here this evening. It's always hard, we're a community that compromise, listen to each other. There's a lot of talking, good stuff tonight. Really appreciate people being here and, partaking in this. I really, it's great to see. I appreciate Brian's and his team's work always with the electrical. Pretty exciting. That hydroelectric is honestly in a state that's struggling for energy. We're sitting in a spot right now that might be pretty special, and that's to me very exciting. So that's it.
Okay, Vice Mayor Senga.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Barnwell's comments about it. It's pretty exciting, I think. First off, I thank Brian and Russ for their presentation and the update for our electric utility, but I do think that the possibilities are there, and if we can just somehow take a hold and make it happen, I think that would just be an awesome thing for us. I would also like to say that the groundwork has begun on Jesse Lee's home site. They've started filling and just doing all the groundwork. It's beautiful. Check it out. I'm looking forward to sometime in the future where we're going to decide actually what we're going to have, where and what, and how it actually is going to be laid out. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And I was going to mention the groundwork there too. I go up and look. Another thing, if you're interested in what's happening, if you walk up the canyon, we're getting a new water tank up there, and I've been going up every couple days to see the progression, and it's pretty exciting to see. This was a pretty full day of events with Senator Sullivan and the Commandant of the Coast Guard being here, and Mayor Hickey, and a lot of people down at the pavilion. I'm really appreciative of the people that showed up to show interest or support, or however you want to say, but it was really very good. And for the people that came here tonight, these are tough things to make decisions. I guess you have to sort of figure that we've given it some thought. So, and we've heard all of you. I know that there are a couple of big issues that divide our town. It would be nice if we could just sort of find a middle of ground, but I'm afraid sometimes it's not that easy. So anyway, that's where we're at. And Vice Mayor has something to say, so go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I forgot, I was going to say thank you to the American Legion for helping out with the Commandant and all the dignitaries coming to Seward and visiting. Thank you very much
Yeah.
to the American Legion.
You made a vegan prime rib sandwich. You made a very good prime rib sandwich.
Yes,
I was very
it
grateful.
was much to be thanked. So what we have, is there anyone else having anything? Okay, we will be going into an executive session here in a bit, and it's just for the annual city manager's evaluation. So I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to go into that. Then we'll take maybe a 5-minute break so we can just sort of chill a bit, and then we'll have to have everyone leave except the city clerk. Do you
No, just me, thank you.
Huh?
Just me.
Just you?
Yeah.
Okay, so the council and the city manager. So I move to go into executive session for the annual city manager evaluation. I'd need a second,
I'll second.
and then we would vote on that.
Voting to go into executive session for the city manager annual evaluation. Calhoun,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Warner,
Yes.
Draper,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Kreitz,
Yes.
and Mayor McClure.
Yes.
The motion is passed, and sounds like we're taking a 5-minute recess.
Yes, we will. And then at the end, when we're done, we will, by the rules, have to open the doors again, and I will just sort of gavel us out of the meeting. There won't be any comments made at that point, so there's no need to stick around out there for what we do. So, okay, so I'm going to gavel now just to set, we'll be back at 9:45 to do that. on and we'll,
Okay, we are back on the air.
okay, I'm going to bring us back to the meeting after the executive session, and it is 10:28. We did the annual evaluation for the city manager, and I will adjourn this meeting at 10:28.